When we hear the name Sony, we usually think about game consoles, TVs, or cameras. But now we might have to start thinking about cars too. Why? Because Sony introduced this electric car called the Afeela, a vehicle being developed together with Honda. Now tell me in the comments, who wins this matchup? Our American muscle monster or the Afeela? And boom, as you can see, our electric Afeela actually won the race. So now making a full review and testing video for it became mandatory. Hopefully this car turns out to be as high quality as Sony's other products. So first of all, let's move on to the suspension test. Since this is mainly a city car, expectations are naturally very high. And yep, as you can see, the car managed to meet those expectations really well. Even though the car is heavy, especially because of its massive battery pack, and despite having pretty low ground clearance, it still managed to perform impressively, especially over rough terrain and bumps. Here, the car was genuinely excellent. Honestly, I think this car might even have an air suspension system. Why? Because you can clearly see the way it handles bumps in this section. Now let's move on to the urban speed bump test, where once again, the performance was really solid. I honestly can't find any major issue with this car here. But there is one area where this soft suspension setup could become a disadvantage, and that's handling. So for the handling test, I first tried the car at 60 km per hour, and it passed the test successfully. Then I increased the speed slightly to 64 km per hour, and surprisingly, despite the soft suspension, the car still managed to pass. At that point, my expectations got even higher, so I pushed it up to 67 km per hour. And once again, the car technically completed the test, although it did hit one of the cones. Now you guys tell me in the comments, should we count 67 km per hour as a successful result for this car or not? Up to this point, the car has honestly delivered a really impressive performance. And since Sony is involved in building it, it naturally makes the car feel more trustworthy. So, now let's move on to the next section, crash testing. First up is the pillar strength test. In this test, the car managed to record a pretty strange number, around 38,000 newtons. Honestly, I expected a much higher result from this vehicle. That number doesn't really feel worthy of a car backed by Sony. But with that result in mind, we moved on to the rollover test. And here, the car actually had a lot to say. Why? Because the performance was outstanding. Even though the impacts were extremely violent, the car still managed to protect the passengers really well. And again, ignore the dummy's arm clipping through things. I seriously don't know why that happens in every single test. But as you can see, even after the crash, the doors were still able to open. After finishing those initial safety tests, we moved on to the main crash tests, where the car really gets challenged. In the 50% frontal crash test, the car showed an average performance overall. Of course, in the end, you need to tell me in the comments how many safety stars this car deserves. Next up was the 100% frontal crash test. Once again, the car delivered a solid performance. I honestly can't criticize it much here. So up to this point, we can definitely say the car has recorded some respectable crash test results. Now we move on to the head-on collision test. This is where the car was finally put under real pressure. Yep, you heard that right. The impact here was actually pretty serious. But surprisingly, the car still managed to protect its passengers. For Sony's first serious step into the automotive world, I'd say this is a pretty good start, at least in terms of safety. Next comes the rear crash test, where once again the car managed to protect the passengers very well. Even the rear passengers remained in good condition after the impact. Then we moved on to the side impact test. And this is where you need to tell me whether this car deserves a 5-star safety rating or not. As you can see, the car once again delivered a fairly good performance. It's hard to criticize it too much here, but honestly, with side airbags, this car probably could have performed even better. Next up, rear impact with a trailer. And once again, the car delivered a very solid performance. The same goes for the side impact with a trailer. The car managed to maintain its strong safety performance there as well. Finally, we arrive at the exciting final part of the video, the acceleration and braking test. This is the part that really decides whether the car is worth buying or not. So we put the car into sport mode, and honestly, the acceleration is really impressive. Yep, it managed to go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 5 seconds. That's an excellent number. And the braking performance? Honestly, I can't complain there either. Despite being a heavy EV, the car managed to stop in just 35 meters. In my opinion, this car performs excellently in terms of safety, acceleration, handling, and suspension. I genuinely don't see any major weaknesses. But now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, does this car actually deserve to be bought or not? See you in the next video. Goodbye for now.